3b. Okay, so for 3b, note that this is equal to e to the power x plus 2 squared, right? And then plus 4, right?
So the range is actually greater than 4.
No, not exactly. Because remember that e to the power x is something always positive. So e to the power x is positive. That means e to the power x plus 2 is bigger than 2, right? Because e to the power x is positive, therefore, e to the power x plus 2 is bigger than 2. When you square it, e to the power x plus 2 square is bigger than 4. And then when you add 4, you get e to the power x plus 2 square plus 4 is bigger than 8.
Is it okay if we just state the range domain like this instead of writing all that?
4.
I just state the domain like this.
Yeah, but you have to explain why like this. You have to show the process. Okay. So therefore, the range is basically, it follows from this process that the range must be numbers greater than 8, right? How about 4? Okay, 4b, you want to find the inverse of sine hyperbolic of 3x minus 1. So f of x is sine hyperbolic of 3x minus 1. So what is the equation for the inverse? We know that y equal to f inverse of x if x equal to f of y. So that means here x equal to sine hyperbolic of 3y minus 1. And then I have to write y in terms of x. So I have to solve for y. That's what I need to do. So let's, by definition, sine hyperbolic is just e to the power 3y minus 1 minus e to the power minus 3y minus 1 divided by 2. Now let's multiply the two sides by e to the power 3y minus 1. So multiply the two sides by e to the power 3y minus 1. So you get e to the power 3y minus 1 times x equal to e to the power 3y minus 1 squared minus 1 over 2. Because e to the power 3y minus 1 times e to the power minus 3y minus 1 is just e to the power 0, which is 1. Okay, now what you get is 2 times e to the power 3y minus 1 times x equal to e to the power 3y minus 1 squared minus 1, right? Just for convenience, let's this e to the power 3y minus 1 be t. So at the end, I'm going to write everything in terms of y. Just for a moment, let this equal to t. So that means my equation is like this. 2 times tx is equal to t squared minus 1, right? Now, this is a quadratic in terms of t. My plan is to find t in terms of x, and then because t is e to the power something, then I can solve for y, right? E to the power 3y, I can solve for y. Now let's first find t in terms of x. This is a quadratic in terms of t, right? So what is the quadratic? Let me just write it. So you have t squared minus 2xt minus 1 equal to 0. So you have two solutions. This is a quadratic. If you write the formula, quadratic formula, t is equal to, solve for t, is equal to x plus minus square root of x squared plus 1. No, because then you have to divide. If you divide by 2, you get this. I simplified basically here. Just a small simplification. Now, because remember, t is e to the power something. So remember that t is e to the power 3y minus 1. So t is positive. So that means since t is positive, so you have t equal to just x plus square root of x squared plus 1. Because here you have two answers. You have to choose one of them. Since t is positive, you choose the x plus. And then I'm quite done, because what is t now? T is e to the power 3y minus 1. So that means 3y minus 1 is ln of x plus x squared plus 1. So, and then you can write y, right? So that is the inverse.
Could you do question 5?
Is this clear for everyone? Okay, so question 5C is quite the same process. 5C of what we did in this. So you have to do the same thing for 5C. Which one which part of 5?
5C, yes.
Oh, 5C? Oh, it's pretty the same. So you basically have to solve this. What is it? Sine hyperbolic of 5x is 10. I mean, I could also use the formula for the inverse, but I don't want you to memorize that formula. The formula is basically this ln of x plus x squared plus 1. But that's the inverse of sine hyperbolic. But you don't have to memorize it. You just do the process. Right? So you have this equation, e to the power 5x minus e to the power minus 5x over 2 equal to 10. So e to the power 5x minus e to the power minus 5x equal to 20. Then you multiply by what? E to the power 5x. If you multiply by e to the power 5x, you get e to the power 10x minus 1 equal to 20 e to the power 5x. So you have e to the power 5x squared minus 20 times e to the power 5x minus 1 equal to 0. Again, this is a quadratic in terms of e to the power 5x, right? Yeah, so it's e to the power 5x squared, right? 10, it's 5x squared. So that means you have this equation, t squared minus 20t minus 1 equal to 0. Right? Then solve for t, and then at the end, remember t is e to the power 5x. So if you solve for t, you find the value of t, but t is e to the power 5x. So that means e to the power 5x, for instance, equal to 5 or 10, whatever. So then you can find x, right? Is that clear? Is this clear, anyone? Okay, good. Okay, so let me continue our discussion of trigonometry that we had yesterday. Because this is super important, the unit circle. Let me draw this again. So recall that if you have some angle theta, so you measure theta counterclockwise with respect to the positive direction of the x-axis. So theta counterclockwise, referring to the positive direction of the x-axis. Now, usually we have the unit circle. That means the radius is 1, okay? So you have a unit circle. That means the radius is 1. So if you have a point on the unit circle whose coordinate is x and y, so recall that we have cosine theta equal to x over r, which is equal to x, and sine theta equal to y over r, which is equal to y. Okay, now in the first quadrant, x and y are both positive, right? So that means both cosine and sine are positive in the first quadrant. So cosine theta positive, sine theta positive. In the second quadrant, x is negative, but y is positive. So cosine theta is negative, sine theta is positive. In the third quadrant, both x and y are negative. So cosine theta negative, sine theta negative. And in the fourth quadrant, x is positive. So cosine theta is positive, but y is negative. So sine theta is negative. So I want you to keep this picture in your head forever. And that's because cosine theta is equal to x, sine theta equal to y, basically. That's it. Now, some useful identities. So the most important one is both of these cosine and sine are periodic with period 2 pi. So cos of theta plus 2 pi is cos theta, and sine of theta plus 2 pi is equal to sine theta. Then we have cosine of pi minus theta is minus cosine of theta, and sine of pi minus theta is equal to sine theta. Then you have cosine of pi plus theta, again is minus cos theta, and sine of pi plus theta is equal to minus.
So cos is all negative.
So pi, if theta is something between 0 and pi half, then pi minus theta is located in the second quarter, pi plus theta is located in the third quarter. So remember, in the second quarter and third quarter, cosine is negative, right? That's why you get negative for cosine. But in the second quarter, sine is positive, so that's why you get positive. And something also helpful, if two angles, if the sum of two angles is pi half, then we usually say they're complement of each other. So their sine and cosine switches. So that means, let me write another identity. So I mean, cosine of pi half minus theta equal to sine theta. And of course, if you can also write it in terms of sine. Sine of pi half minus theta is equal to cos theta. So for instance, cosine of pi over 6 is equal to sine of pi over 3. Sine of pi over 6 is cosine of pi over 3. Yeah, let's, if, for example, if theta is pi over 3, then you get cosine of pi over 6 is sine of pi over 3, and sine of pi over 6 equal to cosine. Okay. Now, I want to tell you about cosine inverse a little bit and sine inverse. So cosine inverse of x. So it's also known as arc cosine. So cosine inverse or arc cosine. Sine inverse or arc sine. So cosine inverse is just the inverse, but you have to be careful because cosine is not 1-to-1. So we know that, for example, cosine of pi half is 0. Cosine of 3 pi half is also 0. Or sine of 0 is 0. Sine of pi is also 0. Just let me write. So note that sine of 0 is equal to 0. Sine of pi equal also to 0. Sine of 2 pi also is equal to 0. So what should I define sine inverse of 0? So you see 0 goes to 0 pi. I mean, the function sine sends 0 to 0, pi to 0, 2 pi also to 0, right?
How do I do that?
Now, what is sine inverse of 0? Which one is this? Is it 0 pi or 2 pi? Which one I have to choose? So the convention is we choose sine inverse something between. So sine inverse is always so sine inverse of x is value is between pi half and negative pi half. I mean, I will talk about the inverse in more detail later, but just to let you know, the arc sine is always between minus pi half and pi half. Then in this interval, sine has a unique value. Okay? We restrict the domain of sine theta to minus pi half and pi half, and we just call the inverse based on this interval. So therefore, if you just look at minus pi half to pi half, so let me just make a small chart.
So what do you write for sine of 1, 0, that one?
Sine inverse of 0 therefore is 0. Because 0, so between this value 0 pi 2 pi, which one is between minus pi half and pi half? So among these values 0 pi 0, 0 pi 2 pi, which one is between minus pi half and pi half? 0. So So let me just write x minus pi half minus pi over 3 minus pi over 4 minus pi over 6. 0. So sine of minus pi half is -1. Oh, by the way, when I say minus pi half, so when you say minus theta, you have to go clockwise. So minus theta, that means is located here. Let me show you in this picture. So this is minus theta. So when you do negative angles, you go clockwise. Positive, counterclockwise. Okay. So sine of, so minus pi half is just this angle. Minus pi half is here, right? This is minus pi half. So sine of minus pi half is -1. And minus pi over 3, minus pi over 4, minus pi over c, they are all located in the fourth quadrant. So the sign is that's just negative root 3 over 2, negative root 2 over 2, negative half, 0, half, root 2 over 2, root 3 over 2, 1. So based on this table, now you can, inverse is just a switch, you switch x and y for the inverse, right? For the inverse, you just switch x and y. Let me just x and sine inverse of x. So -1 minus root 3 over 2 minus root 2 over 2 minus 1/2, 0, 1/2. So sine inverse of -1 is what? Is minus pi half, then minus pi over 3, minus pi over 4, minus pi over 6, 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, and pi over. So for sine inverse is between minus pi half and pi. What about cosine? For cosine, we choose it between 0 and pi. So cosine inverse of x is, we choose it between 0 and pi. So if you do the same analysis for cosine, except the only thing for cosine is that the cosine inverse is between 0 and pi. So I just make a table chart for just inverse function. This is x and this is cosine inverse of x. So you have -1. What is cosine inverse of -1? So which angle? So the question is, for which angle theta, let's say for which angle theta, cosine inverse is equal to, sorry, cosine theta is equal to -1. So let me also write here, when I say, or I can write here, when I say y equal to cosine inverse of x, that means x is cosine of y. Or when I say y equal to sine inverse of x, that means x equal to sine y, right? That is the meaning of the inverse function, basically. Now, so what is the cosine inverse of -1? For what angle theta, cosine is -1? Is it pi? And you have to choose between 0 and pi. I mean, there are infinitely many angles whose cosine is pi, is -1. But you have to choose the one between 0 and pi, and that is pi. How about -√3/2? No, it's 5 pi/6. -√2/2 is 3 pi/4. 1/2 is 2 pi/3. 0 is just pi/2. 1/2 is pi/3. √2/2 is pi/4. √3/2 is pi/6, and 1 is 0. Right? Try to understand these two charts, these two tables. Look, I first look at this cosine. So you know that cosine of pi is -1, right? Cosine of 5 pi/6 is -√3/2. Cosine of 3 pi/4 is -√2/2, and so on. Cosine of 2 pi/3 is 1/2. Oh, sorry, -1/2. Here is -1/2. Cosine of pi/2 is 0, right? Cosine of pi/3 is 1/2. And cosine of 0 is 1. Okay? So try to understand the meaning of these two tables carefully. Is there any question about this? Okay. So let me ask you a question. So what is cosine inverse of -1/3, -1/2? So cos inverse of -1/2 is What is cos inverse of -1/2? Look here at this chart, and this is -1/2. Sorry, be careful. So what is cos inverse of -1/2? 2π/3. So it's cosine of 2π/3. And again, cosine of 2π/3 is -1/2. So cosine of cos inverse of -1/2 is just -1/2. You go back and forth. Now, what if you have cos inverse of cosine of cos inverse of cosine of, let's say, 5π/4. So what is cos inverse of cosine of 5π/4? Cosine of 5π/4 is, what is cosine of 5π/4? It's in the third quadrant. It's -√2/2, right? Now, what is cosine inverse of -√2/2? It's 3π/4. So here the point is cosine of cos inverse of anything is just x. However, cos inverse of cos inverse of cos theta is not necessarily equal to theta. So this was just something interesting. Another question. Suppose that cosine of theta is equal to 1/3, and theta is something between 0 and π/2. Then compute, yes.
So this is not all the numbers in inverse, right? There's more to it.
Of course, there are infinitely many numbers, but this is just some typical. Then compute sine theta and tangent theta. I mean, there are two solutions for this. Either you can use this identity, sine square of theta plus cos square of theta is equal to 1. So I didn't mention this identity. Do you remember why this is true? Sine inverse, sorry, sine square plus cos square is equal to 1.
I remember.
Okay, so I can explain it to you just in a minute. It's easy. But this is this is one of the most important identities in trigonometry. So sine square plus cos square is 1. So either you can use this. So this is the first solution. If you use this identity, then we have sine square of theta equal to 1 minus cos square of theta. That means sine square of theta is equal to so here cos theta is 1 over 3. So it's 1 or minus 1 over 9, which is 8 over 9, right? So that means sine theta is either plus or minus square root of 8 over 9. But we know that theta is between 0 and pi half. Theta is between 0 and pi half. So because theta is between 0 and pi half, then sine theta must be positive. So since theta so let me write here, because theta between 0 and pi half, then just sine theta equal to square root of 8 over 9. So that means tangent of theta is equal to sine theta divided by cos theta okay. Or you can just look at the right triangle. This also pretty much the same logic. So you have a right triangle like this. This is theta. So cosine, we know that cosine of theta is 1 over 3. So that means cosine is, what is the formula for the cosine in the right triangle? Is adjacent divided by hypotenuse, right? So cosine theta is x divided by r right? And sine theta is equal to y over r. Okay, so you can use the similar logic to what I did in the first solution. So basically, we know that cosine of theta is 1 over 3. So that means here, let me just modify this triangle so that cosine theta becomes 1 over 3. That means here you have 1 over 3. So the opposite side is therefore equal to what? So this side is square root of 8, right? Because you have the hypotenuse is 3, one side is 1. 3 squared minus 1 is 8. Okay, so that means here cosine theta is 1 over 3, sine theta is root 8 over 3, and tangent is just root 8.
No, that was well. I do the news. I did.
I'm teaching just you.
I do every other question, I just can't do.
Okay, I will help you. Don't worry. Now let me ask you a similar question. Another question. Oh, sorry, this is 1 over, it's not 1 over 3. This is 1 over 3. Okay, now what is theta? Cosine theta. If sine theta is 1 over 3, theta is between pi half and pi. What is cosine theta? Who can do this? I give you a bonus mark.
Can I use the triangle method?
Yeah?
So if you draw a triangle and
Mm-hmm.
so using x equals to opposite over hypotenuse,
Mm-hmm.
you can figure out that the opposite is equal to 1 and
That's
you
right.
just have to figure out what x is.
That's right. So x is, again, square root 8. Right? But what is cosine theta? So remember that the only thing that you need to be careful is here, theta is between pi half and pi. Okay? Because theta is between pi half and pi, then cos is negative. So cosine theta is minus. Okay. Because I told at the beginning that theta is between pi half and pi. So here sine could be positive. Between pi half and pi, sine is positive, right? But cosine is negative. Any question? No question? Now let us do some trigonometric equations. So just a simple example of a simple equation. So solve for x. So imagine that I tell you to solve this equation like 2 times sine x equal to 1. I mean, here you want to find all solutions, not only one solution, but all the solutions. So 2 times sine x equal to 1. What is x? So that means sine x equal to 1/2, right? So sine of what angle is 1/2? 5/6. What else? 5/6. And you can add 2 pi to each of them to get, I mean, there are infinitely many angles whose sine is 1/2. So 5/6 and then 2 pi plus pi/6 and then 2 pi plus 5/6 and so on. Right? So in general, it's x equal to 2 times k pi plus pi/6 or x equal to 2 times k pi plus 5 pi/6 for any integer. So b sine x equal to 0. So what is x? X can be 0, pi, 2 pi. So in general, x is, so the general solution is x equal to k times pi for any integer k. Another equation is again simple. So cosine x equal to 1 over 2. So x is, can be pi over 3. But it also can be minus pi over 3. Okay. Or it can be 2 pi plus pi over 3. Or 2 pi minus pi over 3. 4 pi plus pi over 3. 4 pi minus pi over 3. So on and so forth. So in general, the general solution is x equal to 2k plus or minus pi over 3. So remark here is cosine of x is always to cosine of minus x. However, let me just add one thing. Sine of minus x is equal to minus sine of x. So cosine of minus x is equal to cosine of x. I'll write it this way. It's the same equation. So cosine of minus x is equal to cosine of x. But sine of minus x is minus times sine x. Okay. Now, can you solve this equation for me? 2 times sine squared x. Just give me a second. Two times sine squared plus sine x minus 1 equal to 0. So hint is, this is just 2 sine x minus 1 times sine x plus 1. So that means sine x is equal to either 1/2 or sine x is -1, right? So sine x minus 1/2 is x equal to 2k pi plus pi over 6, or that's the general formula I'm writing here. And sine x minus 1 is, so x is 2k pi minus pi half.
On the test, we have to write both of them,
Yeah.
pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6.
Yes. Okay. I think it's enough for today. I'm a little bit tired. I cannot talk anymore.
On Monday.
Yeah. Do you have any question?